Impact segment tonight, hate crimes. You will not hear this in the elite media, but they have fallen about 25% in America since 1995. Hate crimes have. 2013, last stats available, there were close to 6,000 hate crimes in the USA. According to the FBI, about 3,500 of those crimes were based on race. 66% of those directed against African Americans. So the number of hate crimes is relatively small, but you wouldn't know that listening to some far-left professors.
We are a white supremacist society. We are a society that on its face values white people, what they do, and their body, their integrity, more than people of color, not just African Americans, but all people of color. We dehumanize people of color in this country.
Racism in this country is as ubiquitous as rain. And so it actually makes perfect sense. So instead of saying this is a lone wolf or this is someone who we just can't imagine, well, he told us why he did what he did. And he told us who he hated. It happens with a great degree of regularity. It's broken. Our systems are broken. Our institutions and our structures are racist.
Joining us now from Southern California, Mary Catherine Ham here in New York City, Juan Williams, both are Fox News analysts. You've been around a long time. When you hear stuff like that, how do you react?
Rhetoric, cheap rhetoric, and I think taking advantage of a very emotional and upsetting moment in America. Exploitative.
All right, so you use the word cheap. Why is it cheap?
Because I think race is a serious problem in the country. I think you can have serious conversation, but when you start talking in terms of white supremacy, you are conjoining things that they don't fit, Bill.
Well, the stats don't match it.
Let me just say, this is not Rhodesia. This is not South Africa. I don't happen to know Bill O'Reilly by accident. I work, you work, we work together. And in fact, we're friends. So I don't understand how someone say, oh, that's a white supremacist society. I can tell you, I grew up here. I live here. Yeah. I do not live under somebody's thumb.
So you yourself in your life have not seen white supremacy.
Oh, sure. I know white people who think that black people are not as smart, not as trustworthy.
People who feel that way about white people.
Well, in reaction, but remember, blacks are the minority. The power, the money is in the white community in this country. That's the overwhelming majority.
Okay, but that's not white supremacy.
No, and that's my point to you.
That's an economic system that has evolved that way. And as you said, that's what we're talking about if the fix is in. Right. But as far as Mary Catherine, these college professors, and you know, their students listen to this stuff. Right. That, you know, the whole game is rigged. It's all white people, and they somehow can manipulate so you don't get what you should get. That's the message here.
Look, I think introspection nationally is appropriate and makes people feel better in a terrible and tragic and emotional situation. So that's what people are doing. Here's what, when it turns a corner from introspection to writing off all progress that we have made over the last 60 years, and I grew up in the South and went to school with people of all different colors and all different socioeconomic statuses. And so when we write that off as nothing, that's when I have a problem. And then the other thing is introspection often leads to, hey, isn't that half of the country that I politically disagree with causing this kind of tragedy with their political speech? And I think that's a real dangerous road to go down. It happens more often with people sort of blaming that on the right than it does the left. But either way, it's a bad idea because that ain't free speech.
We're going to have, right after you guys, we're going to have a analysis of how these websites, these white-driven websites, how much influence they really have. Because in my life, I don't go on the internet. I'm not trolling the internet. I mean, to me, it's a giant sewer. Yeah, okay? I agree. And I want to stay as far away from the sewer as I can. But these white power Nazi websites, they exist, but so do the black power Panther websites. And I'm saying to myself, have they broken out? Have these white power websites that have always been there since the internet's been invented broken out? Have they?
Well, I think that when you see a young man like Mr. Roof or whatever you want.
Yeah, he seeks them out.
Right, and so he seeked it out. And I think that you have in this country, again, a lot of anger. It's very curious, you know, because you talked about it as if it's a parallel, black websites that preach hate and white websites. And I don't see it that way, Bill. I think that you have this white ideology and anger.
You don't go to Farrakhan's website.
No, but listen, that's, again, much smaller in scope than people who believe. When this young man says this stuff about blacks are taking over or you're raping our women,
Well,
that kind of thinking is bizarre.
He's a sick terrorist.
No, don't just write it off as sickness, because I think, as I said to you earlier,
he's a sick
there's
terrorist.
a lot of distrust and I think maligning of black people in this society.
I think that Dylan Roof, this idiot we're looking at now, represents 0.1% of the population.
I wish.
That's what I believe.
I got to
How
tell you
about you,
something.
Mary
Let me
Catherine?
just say one last thing, Mary Catherine.
Hold on. I agree with Juan that it's not as if there's an absence of a problem here. There's certainly people who believe this, and Roof is proof of that. Here's the thing that's interesting, though, is that one of the things we've heard in reports about him is one of the reasons he felt so isolated is because he could not find the people who wanted to do this this kind of awful thing with him. And so I think that is he lives in South Carolina. It's not the place that it was 60 years ago, and so we shouldn't ignore that.
You're always going to have them. Go ahead, one last word.
You know, I just wanted to say, we're having a very difficult conversation here this evening, but I just wanted to end on this note. You saw Mitt Romney say we should take that flag down.
Confederate flag.
The Confederate flag, symbol of hate. You saw people like Tim Scott, Reverend Goff, the man who spoke in the church yesterday. They talked about he wanted a race war, and in fact, somehow this is bringing black and white people together. I think we sometimes don't celebrate when people come together.
That's a positive.
Charleston's response has been amazing.
I gotta go. You say the Confederate flag is a symbol of hate, and you believe that.
That's the way I feel when I see it.
Okay. And absolutely 100% legitimate. For some other people who see it in a historical context.
What's the historical context?
It represents bravery.
Oh, get out of town. Bravery, they put it up.
But
They put it up in anger when they were trying to mass resist the civil rights movement in the 60s.
You know as well as I do that it represents to some bravery in the Civil War because the Confederates fought hard.
That wasn't the civil.
But
That
in
wasn't
South
the
Carolina, it's an
Confederate
issue
flag.
of government endorsement. That's the issue.
But that's what it represents. You're right historically.
Okay.
But in their minds, that's what it represents. And in your mind, it represents hate. So, and everybody should know what the two sides are believing.
That's legit.
All right?
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
That's my job. Juan, Mary Catherine, thank you. 1 foot.